Sarah is having the best holiday of her life on the beautiful island of Mauritius. She starts going out with her diving teacher Jackson, who shows her what life is like outside of the business world. Jackson asks her to stay as they look at their pictures on her last day, but Sarah can't because she has an important job in London. Sarah hates saying goodbye, so she waits until Jackson has to go to the bathroom and then leaves without saying anything else. Jackson is in a lot of pain when he comes back out. A year later, Sarah is going about her normal life in London when she gets a message from a friend in Mauritius telling her she's getting married, and wants Sarah to be her maid of honor. Sarah, of course, agrees, and sometime later she shows up on the island ready to have fun. First, she stops to buy alcohol from an old friend, but a dog starts to chase her. As Sarah climbs over the fence, the owner calls the dog back right away and welcomes Sarah with open arms. After putting alcohol in her car, he asks her if she has already been to see certain someone. Sarah acts like she doesn't know what he means. After that, Sarah goes with her friends to swim in a waterfall and then to a bar for a break. Her friend wonders if Sarah will stay this time, but Sarah is set on going to London for her job. When Sarah sees Jackson close, she hides her face while her friend tells her that Jackson now runs his own dive school. Sarah goes to a beach party in the evening and finds Jackson there, too. She works up the courage to talk to him, but the whole conversation is tight and awkward. Jackson says he has to work, but Sarah follows him and offers to walk him home. Jackson isn't sure at first, but then he agrees. Later, at his place, they have some drinks and Sarah tells him how proud she is of him for doing well in school. This makes Jackson admit that Sarah's drive was an inspiration to him. As the night goes on, Sarah and Jackson have many sweet times together, which makes Sarah realize how much she has missed him. But Jackson is angry and says he doesn't see why he should be with her if she's just going to leave again. Jackson says he would never be happy in London when Sarah says he could come with her there. They start to fight, but in the end, they kiss and spend the night together. Sarah's friend calls her the next morning to tell her that she will be half an hour late, and that they can't wait any longer because the only boat on the island that goes to the wedding spot is leaving soon. Sarah doesn't want to miss the wedding, so she runs out and asks her old friend Freddie for a favor. Since he is a pilot, he can fly her to the wedding on his own plane. Jackson gets on the flight because he is also going to the wedding, but he is in a bad mood because Sarah left again without saying anything. Freddie tells Sarah to sit in the co-pilot seat once they are in the air so they can catch up. Freddie also tells her a few things about the plane, like how to keep it steady and use the autopilot, because he remembers that she used to take flying lessons. This way, she can help him get out of his seat to take his medicine when the time comes. They also talk about what's going on in their lives. Freddie says he's still sad about his dead wife, whose picture he keeps on the plane. Freddie starts coughing, and Sarah yells at Jackson to get him some water, but he can't find any. Sarah tries to calm Freddie down when she realizes he's having a heart attack. But Freddie passes out and falls on the stick, making the plane drop and Jackson hit his head. At that time, an oxygen tank comes flying out from behind and hits the windshield and the control panel. Jackson comes and pushes Freddie off the pilot seat. Sarah grabs the stick and tries very hard to remember what Freddie told her to do to get the plane to go higher and keep it going straight ahead. The plane is steadied just before it hits the ocean, which is lucky. Then Jackson tries to give CPR to Freddie, but it's too late. Freddie is already dead. He asks Sarah if she can fly the plane, and she says she can't do much because she only took a few lessons 2 years ago. She looks at the damage and sees that the GPS is broken. The couple tries to use their phones, but there is no service up there. Then, they try the radio a few times, but no one answers. When they try the autopilot, they find that it doesn't work either. Worse yet, they only have half a tank of gas left, which might not be enough to get them to a safe place. At least the compass works, so they try to figure out which way they were going before by looking at their watches and setting a timer for when they will turn the plane again. But all of a sudden, a big, dark storm comes up in front of them, and Sarah doesn't know what to do. At that moment, on the radio, someone named Samuel comes through. Sarah tells him that they are flying the plane and that Freddie died, but when the plane gets closer to the weather, the signal goes out. After a few seconds of static, Samuel comes back and says that the storm is too big to fly around. Before he can tell them what to do, the signal goes out again. Jackson changes places with Sarah so she can be the pilot, but she still doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, a lightning bolt hits the plane, making it shake as it flies through the dark. Sarah, who is barely in charge, chooses to try to fly above the storm. She doesn't listen to Jackson when he says they are going too high. After a lot of work, Sarah gets the plane going in the right direction, and they soon reach the clear sky. Unfortunately, the high altitude makes them feel sick. Sarah has trouble seeing, and she passes out. This causes the plane to drop again into the storm. The plane starts to spin out of control, and they can't see anything because of the dark clouds. Sarah wakes up, though, and she never stops fighting with the handle. After a lot of work, she gets the plane back on level, only to find that the compass is also broken. Jackson remembers a school project and uses a needle and some liquid to make a guide, which tells Sarah how to steer in the storm. They finally get out of the storm a few seconds later, but there isn't much fuel left. Sarah remembers the backup tank and changes to it right away. However, the second fuel tank goes up quickly for a second before quickly going down again. Jackson thinks that the tank on the plane's wings might have a leak, so he ties his body to the plane with a rope and goes out to fix it. Sarah doesn't like the idea, but she has no choice but to stay inside and pilot while Jackson climbs to the front of the plane and she watches in fear. When he opens the engine, fuel sprays right into his face, proving that there is a leak. He tries to use duct tape, but it takes him a few tries because of how fast they are going and how windy it is. When the hole is fixed, the fuel gauge also gets back to normal. Jackson tries to climb back into the plane, but he slips and falls, leaving him hanging under the wing. Sarah is scared and wants to help him, but if she leaves the yoke alone, the plane will start to swerve. Sarah takes the seat belt and wraps it around the yoke to fix the problem. This keeps the plane from moving. Then she runs to Jackson and tells him to take her hand. When he reaches out his hand, the plane slams into him. Sarah tries harder and is able to catch him. She pulls him inside and sees that his arm was badly hurt during the fight. Sarah grabs one of the bottles of alcohol meant for the wedding to clean the wound. Jackson takes a sip before Sarah pours the alcohol on the wound, which is very painful. Sarah tells him that she always thinks of the time they spent together, which takes his mind off the pain, and then she cracks his arm back into place. Then she makes a homemade splint out of a hanger and wraps his arm with it and bandages while telling him how great the trick he just did was. Then they see that the fuel level is at 5%, so they decide to keep going until they find land. Sarah thinks it would be a good idea to lighten the plane so that it uses less fuel. So, they start throwing odd things out, scaring a few people with the sudden object of rain. The idea works and keeps the fuel gauge from moving around. Jackson then asks a hard question, and Sarah knows that he means they should also get rid of Freddy's body. It makes her feel bad, but Jackson tells her that they need to stay alive more than anything else. Sarah puts a picture of Freddy's wife in his body and pushes him off the plane. She takes a moment to mourn his death. Next, Sarah wants to get rid of the booze, but Jackson says that since it has ethanol in it, it can be used as fuel. Sarah thinks it's a good idea and decides that, since Jackson is hurt, she will be the one to take the risk this time. She climbs slowly and carefully to the top of the plane, where she holds onto the wing and opens the fuel tank's valve. Jackson gives her the bottle, but the wind is too strong, and the bottle blows out of her hands. Jackson tries again quickly, and this time it works. Sarah pours the 3 bottles into the valve one at a time. Jackson is about to give her the last one, but he drops it on the plane by accident. He has to ask her to go back inside because he has no other choice. Sarah tries to move slowly, but she almost loses her balance. Just in time, she grabs the top of the plane's bar. She quickly jumps into the plane and slides in, which makes her feel glad but also gives her a small panic attack. Then Jackson says that he thinks he may have seen an island while they were drinking. Going back is dangerous because they might use up the last of the fuel if something goes wrong, but Sarah chooses to believe Jackson. She turns the plane around, and as the fuel gauge keeps going down, they start looking for the island Jackson saw. They don't find anything, and when the tank is finally empty, the plane shuts down. It will glide for a little while, but not for too long. Sarah and Jackson apologize to each other because they think this is the end. They say they were greedy and didn't pay enough attention to each other's needs. Sarah also says that she doesn't like saying goodbye because it makes her want to stay. Jackson sees the island he had seen earlier, but they still don't know how to land the plane. Sarah doesn't know much about flying, so Jackson tries to help her, but the plane still starts to fall at a fast rate and hits the water in a rough way. The plane flips over all of a sudden, knocking the couple out. The plane slowly starts to sink and lands on the ocean floor on the edge of an underwater cliff. As the plane starts to fill with water, Sarah wakes up and tries furiously to wake up Jackson, but she can't. Soon, the water fills up the whole cabin, and Sarah fights with the door for a few seconds before she finally gets it open. She then swims out to the surface. Once she can breathe again, she starts calling for Jackson, but he doesn't come back. Sarah doesn't want to give up on him, so she swims back down and finds that the plane is about to go over the edge. Jackson's body has floated up and is now stuck in the wing, so Sarah quickly grabs a life jacket, puts it on him, and blows it up right before the plane falls. As the plane falls into the depths, Sarah swims to it and brings Jackson to the island, where she does CPR on him until he wakes up. Sarah laughs happily, and then they both fall asleep on the sand from being too tired. A few hours later, when the water is getting too close, they wake up. Jackson figures out that they are on a beach that will disappear when the tide comes in. Sarah can't believe it and starts crying because they are never safe. When the tide goes out, the pair are left floating in the water, and their arms and legs are getting very tired from keeping their bodies up and swimming against the wind. Sarah starts to cry when she learns that all their hard work was for nothing because they are going to die here anyway. Jackson uses this time to tell Sarah that he loves her. She says the same thing back, and they kiss as they wait for the worst to happen. At that very moment, a rescue boat comes to get them. Sarah is scared of the shapes she sees underwater, but they are able to swim over to the boat and finally get to safety. They don't think they are still alive, so they agree they won't say goodbye to each other again. Share your thoughts in the comments, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.